Hello friends, the Russian dictator Putin announced an Easter truce. So according to him, he proposes a ceasefire, ordered a ceasefire from 6 p.m. on April 19th to midnight on April 24th. And he calls for the same action of Ukraine. And supposedly, this will be an indicator of how willing Ukraine is for further dialogue. Indeed, we see that the past week, the week that is ending, in fact, was filled with events of a negotiating nature. Before that, there was another week when Vitkov flew to Moscow, the special representative of Trump, and before that, Kirill Dmitriev, the special representative of Russia, flew to the USA. And before that, there were meetings of the Ukrainian delegation and the American-Russian Petso and American in Istanbul. And finally, quite a bit later, intense and eventful and very intense indeed, the round of negotiations in Paris during this week where Europeans, Americans and Ukraine met and discussed. The US Secretary of State Marco Rubio called the Russian president directly from there, the dictator, the Russian Foreign Minister Lavrov, and so on. Well, it seems that despite all the Russian bravado and federal propaganda, the Kremlin is very worried about the possibility that the US might withdraw from the negotiation process. This has started to worry them a lot. Why? Well, there are two elements that Russia is counting on, at least for now. The first element is that, in fact, the fact that Russia is interested in they are interested in the complete lifting of sanctions, but at least to start with the partial lifting of American and European sanctions. The second reason is that they are currently very seriously interested in the fact that there is an extremely large demand for rare earth metals and minerals in the USA. As I mentioned earlier, the USA, they need as many rare earth metals as possible because they are increasing their defense budget with expenditures reaching $1 trillion very soon. And in order for them to produce high-tech weapons and be prepared for a possible military confrontation with China, they need more armaments, specifically high-tech ones. Well, and to produce this, quite a lot is needed, let's say, ores, metals for titanium in order to produce the necessary components and to say that the USA will be able to effectively lead in the arms race. Thus, Kirill Dmitriev, who visited the United States of America a few weeks ago, for what purpose? He was specifically accommodated and temporarily removed from the sanctions list, where he met with various representatives of the USA. Just before this, Dmitriev gave an interview to the Russian newspaper Izvestia, and then he confirmed the same viewpoint in an interview with the American TV channel Fox News. And Kirill Dmitriev directly noted that Russia is extremely interested in interacting with the USA regarding investments in Russia, so that the USA would invest their funds in their companies. They would create joint ventures for the extraction of rare earth metals and minerals on Russian territory. They believe that the lifting of sanctions or even partial easing of sanctions was necessary, and Europe was needed precisely for this. And that is why, according to reports from many media outlets, the issue of the readiness of European countries, EU countries, to lift sanctions was directly raised by the Americans. And they asked the Europeans to consider such a possibility. It is evident that this issue was raised, and it may be one of the fundamental reasons why Russia would agree to a ceasefire. This is because the West would be ready for a partial lifting of sanctions. And for the USA, what does the lifting of sanctions mean? This paves the way for investment projects for American money to enter Russia in mineral extraction and joint business activities. This fits into the logic of the current administration, led by with Donald Trump, the president of the USA, when the basis, including international foreign policy decisions, quite often includes, of course, economic benefit. And so this is the first global reason why the Kremlin might agree. And of course, that if the United States of America really withdrew from the negotiation process, then there would be no lifting of sanctions or investments in Kremlin projects. They wouldn't even dream of it, and they wouldn't see it. Therefore, of course, it is obvious that for these very reasons the Russians agree. Secondly, it is clear that it did not succeed. The USA did not fully manage to convince Europe and force them to potentially withdraw support for Ukraine and make significant concessions to Russia and possibly a bridge. This was exemplified by the Italian Prime Minister Meloni, who visited the White House this week, met with American President Trump, and said that the West needs to be made great, like Make America great again. Let's make the West great again. The West refers to the USA, together with European countries, maintaining the much-needed and important transatlantic unity. The next factor that played a role is the rare earth metals and the signing of a memorandum with Ukraine, and Ukraine's readiness to sign the final text of the agreement with the United States on access to rare earth metals minerals next week. For this purpose, a Ukrainian delegation led by the Prime Minister of Ukraine, Mr. Denis Shmyhal, is to visit Washington. So listen, this is also an element that was significant. Ultimately, all these factors are related. That is, it seems disadvantageous for Russia, for the US to fully engage right now. And of course, they are taking certain steps. That is, they are putting pressure on Putin. At what cost will become clear next week. Next week, and the meetings that will take place in London and the negotiation process there, they will be a real testament to how ready the Kremlin truly is for a ceasefire. That is, the negotiation process will continue and next week will be very intense. Well, in fact, we will see. For now, as I am recording this video, it is currently 5:11 p.m. In the Kyiv region and the city of Kyiv, an air raid alert and missile danger have been announced. Well, there is still time until 6 p.m., of course, but we will see. Of course, Putin has no credibility or trust you, just like all his Kremlin criminal organizations that call themselves political power. But we will see. We will see. This will be an indicator. Putin says that this will show Ukraine's readiness, as Ukraine has shown long ago. And there's no need to twist the facts, lie, or manipulate. The president of Ukraine, Vladimir Zelensky, very clearly and openly stated a month ago that Ukraine proposes a ceasefire at sea and in the air and a halt to strikes, after which the Kremlin carried out dozens of airstrikes, terrorist attacks on civilian cities and our citizens. Then Ukraine, in Saudi Arabia, together with the United States of America, made a corresponding statement about the preparations. They are ready to agree to a ceasefire. And once again, the Kremlin was stalling for time, dragging it out as much as possible, even now. And when they were really pressed, it seems they are ready to proceed. But let's see if they will adhere to it, how they will adhere to it. This is a completely temporary phenomenon. Yes, this is the first ceasefire. There was neither a Christmas nor an Easter ceasefire before. This is the first time. Let's see how Russia will adhere to it. And in the future, of course, it will be necessary to agree on monitoring the ceasefire. This is exactly what was discussed this week, both in Paris, and it is expected to continue the discussion next week in London. This is quite an important issue because we understand there is no trust in the Kremlin. But have we taken any specific steps towards a ceasefire this week? And is the truce accelerating next week? Yes, indeed, the truce has become closer. but only with security guarantees for Ukraine. What is official Kyiv insisting on? We need a foreign contingent on Ukrainian territory to monitor this. And together we are capable of pressuring Putin. Take care and glory to Ukraine.